What is adultification bias? If you're from the UK, you've maybe heard recently about a thing called adultification, but what is that? Well, in simplest terms, adultification is a form of racial prejudice where minority children are often seen and treated by standards that are meant to be reserved for people that are more mature/older than the children are. For example, it is found in the US that African American children are often not believed to be their actual age by the police and thus are treated and punished like adults or people older than the age these children actually are. If you want a high-profile American case of adultification, I would look no further than the Tamir Rice case. Tamir Rice was a 12-year-old boy who was playing with a toy gun outside in the park when the police arrived on the scene after a caller phoned in, and the caller did say, "I probably think the gun is fake." The police, without hesitation, some even say, and some of the footage of the case did show that the police didn't even stop their car before shooting. They ultimately shot and killed Tamir Rice without any thought as to this is potentially a child, which is something that the caller also alluded to in their call. But why has this become such a discussion in the UK? Well, beyond the fact that UK authorities generally are pretty rife with this prejudice, a pretty heinous thing has taken place in London in the last 2 years, perpetrated by the Met Police, who were recently found to be not fit for purpose by the HMIC. Just a warning, I'm going to go into detail about some events that can be pretty distressing, so I'm going to put a time code somewhere here for you to skip to if you don't want to go through hearing that very distressing content coming up. In 2020, the Met Police were called to a school in London because a teacher believed that a black 15-year-old girl, known as Child Q in reports because of her age, was in possession of marijuana. Going off purely anecdotal evidence, this isn't really something that schools in the UK do in relation to things like marijuana, unless the circumstances are that something extremely violent is usually going down. And so, the Met Police, in their almighty not fit for purpose wisdom, decided they were going to strip search this 15-year-old black girl while she was on her period without parental consent in the school. Guess what? They didn't find any drugs on Child Q's person. Now, I would like to propose a question to you. In your experience, have you ever experienced that a school would phone the police on a child who, looking at reports, doesn't have a hard evidence case of ever having drugs on their person in school? Should they call the police, despite there being no evidence of this child having any involvement with drugs? Personally, I would say no. Is it appropriate for the Met Police to carry out a very invasive search of a child without any consent in a school? I would say not. But do you know what I would say? I would say that this teacher and also the Met Police were treating this child above the treatment a child should ever be treated, in the fact that this child was treated as if she was a criminal who was also an adult that had done something wrong, when they had no evidence of this, proven by the fact that the Met Police did not find any drugs on Child Q's person. If you want to read more about the events before, during and after what happened to Child Q, I do recommend the City and Hackney Safeguarding Children's Partnerships report, which is going to be linked in the description down below. Although I would note, in my opinion, I do feel like the report is a little bit too forgiving of both the teacher and the Met Police in its report. I don't want to end this video with the normal YouTube-y call-out type outro because it just isn't appropriate for what we have just discussed. But I would like you to go away and think about what has happened to Child Q and consider the fact that this child is going through therapy to help them go through the anguish they went through at the hands of people who are supposed to be there to protect this child and not treat them like they are a grown-up adult criminal. Something that should never be done to any child. And I also want you to go off and think about how many more cases of adultification take place in this world, in the UK specifically, for my UK audience, in the US, for those of you in the US or anywhere, that these children, often minorities, or almost primarily minorities, are often seen and tasked with having to be older than they actually are and not given the childhood that they deserve to have, because society has placed them in a place where they have to be held at higher moral boundaries simply because of ingrained prejudice in our society.